Hi, welcome back to the workshop for episode 23 of the Rickenbacker 62012 string build. And in this episode we're going to be turning our attention to what could be a very tricky issue, and that is getting the electrics sorted out on this build. Okay, so in the last episode we got these wings glued onto the body, and you might remember I said I'm actually quite desperate to get this top glued on. However, I still haven't got the pickups. So I still don't really fully understand what I need to do in terms of routing for the pickups, and especially routing out the access that I need to create to get the truss rod adjuster out of the neck should I need to. Now you might remember to the beginning of this build I was doing kind of semi-regular updates on how much time I'd spent on the build and how much money I'd spent. Now I haven't done one of those for a little while. I got as far as buying the perloid and the binding, and then I haven't had to spend any more money so far. However, I have spent a bunch now. Bridge is on order and it's on its way. Should have that any day soon. Pickups are on order and on their way. And I've also got most of the electrics that I will need. So we've got 5 pots. We've got the 2 capacitors that we need, and we've got the 3-way toggle switch. So in this episode, I'm going to concentrate on getting those kind of fitted onto the pit guard, and also kind of at least get these components wired together. It's going to be quite complicated. There's a lot going on with the electronics here, especially as I've had a little bit of a change of heart on this, and I am actually going to go for the twin output Rickenbacker setup with the stereo output jack. There is a wiring diagram on the plan I'm using. I'm not particularly confident that it's going to be good enough for these purposes. I can't really understand what they're doing with that, so I'm going to look for a better diagram, and hopefully that will enable me to get this sorted out properly. We're not going to need this part of the pit guard just yet, other than we need to make sure that obviously any of these controls aren't falling within that area. But other than that, that can get put to one side for now. So the first thing I think we need to do is get this back onto its template and drill out some pilot holes for where all these controls are actually going to go. And it would seem before we can even do that, I need to drill those pilot holes because I haven't done it yet. Okay, and there's all the controls onto the scratch plate. As you can see, there's not a huge amount of space back there, so I'm going to have to be fairly careful with how I arrange my wiring to make sure that I'm not shorting stuff out. So I think what I'm going to do is try and rearrange these pots a little bit just to get the contacts away from each other. But I also have to be careful that I'm not putting these contacts in a position that's going to actually foul the body of the guitar when we get to that stage. But I think for the time being that will do. Now, I did say I was going to look for another circuit diagram because I wasn't particularly happy with the one that I've got on the plan. But it turns out that Rickenbacker circuit diagrams are as hard to get hold of as the rest of the stuff that I need for this build. I did manage to find a schematic on the Rickenbacker website, but it didn't really kind of make much sense to me. So I'm decided I am actually going to go with the one that's on the plan and then just work my way through it section by section and try and do it in a logical fashion. So all the controls are on the scratch plate. Got some capacitors, got my output jacks, got a bunch of wire. So we'll just break out the soldering iron and start working our way through this. Okay, so I've spent a little bit more time working on this and I think I've got to the bottom of it. Previously, when I've done these kind of setups, what will happen is the pickups will be wired into a volume pot. From there, that pot will be connected to the tone pots and the tone pots do their thing. And they'll also be connected to the switch. And from the switch, you have a single output that will go to your output jack. However, on this setup, the pickups are actually wired to the switch, and then that feeds the tone pots, and then you have two outputs going to two of the volume pots, which then kind of loops in the third volume pot, and from there they go to the outputs. And that's what's thrown me, because normally with one of these three-way toggle switches, the first thing you do basically is you push the two output lugs together and solder them into a single lug. And getting my head to understand that that wasn't going to be the case on this occasion is a really, really obvious thing once you think of it and once you get your head around it. So I've been over this with the multimeter and I've checked this, and with those separated, I've actually got two independently switchable feeds, which will then eventually feed the volume pots to the output. And that's how they do it. I understand it now. I've got it. So now I've established that in my head, I actually feel a hell of a lot better about how this all works and how it's going to go together. Okay, so there's the bulk of the wiring done. I've decided not to wire in the two outputs at this stage. I just think having those dangling off this while it's being moved around, etc., before we can get it installed into the guitar is just a recipe for disaster. I'll probably end up redoing them, so I really can't see the point. So we're not going to go with those for the time being, but other than that, I'm really happy with that. It seems to all make sense. It's gone really well. Hopefully we won't have any issues with that. Okay, so with things progressing on this side of the pickguard, only really leaves one job on the other. Knobs. Now I haven't gone for proper Rickenbacker knobs on this one. I just really couldn't justify the expense. As with everything else on this build, they would have been ridiculously expensive for what they were. But I think these give a good approximation of what we're looking for a fraction of the price. And talking of price, I did mention earlier that we were going to catch up on the expenditure and the time taken, etc. on this build. And in terms of price, the running subtotal last time we checked was £121. Since then, I've bought all of these bits that you can see here. There's quite a bit, and that's nearly doubled the expenditure to 232. I've also got the bridge and the pickups on order, and that's going to really dramatically increase the expenditure, but we'll cover that once they arrive. In terms of the hours, we were at about 20 hours, and we've done a lot of work since that point, as you can see on this little list, and that has basically taken the time spent on the job so far to around about 47 hours. There could be a little bit of wriggle room on there. I'd say kind of within the 10% range. So I think that's some real progress made for this episode, and getting this sorted and out of the way has been quite a big step forward, really. I'm expecting the pickups and the bridge within the next couple of days, which means we can now crack on and get the top sorted out on the guitar and really start to make some progress, hopefully. But that's going to be for the next episode. So as always, smash that like button if you've enjoyed this, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.